program is brought to you by the Psychological Services of Dr. Nancy Mroczek.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Toward a Quality of Life, here in the month of October in the year 2003. I'm here with Mr. Larry Higgenbottom, who's a cultural clinical social worker. And one of Larry's very big concerns and involvements is in the matter of the legacy of slavery to black African Americans in the United States. And I hope we can touch on some sensitive terrain this evening as we proceed in our discussion. I think we could probably start, Larry, with when the slavery started and what, in a nutshell, the genesis and effect of it is all about.
What really got me into this subject here, the first African came here in 1619, Virginia, and what I wanted to do, I looked at, to get a hold of what was going on, some of the behavior that we see in the community, lack of value for black life, disunity amongst black, family disintegration.
How do you figure lack of value?
Well, again, when, be it police or blacks, can walk up to a black individual and put a 45 to his head and shoot over trivial stuff, sneakers, or drug deal gone bad, that is what I call a lack of value for that life. You really don't respect that life. And, you know, historically, since blacks have been in this here country, all right, there's been a total devoid of the preciousness for black life.
But don't you think maybe there's, not to excuse it, but that when commodities are so precious and in a sense have been denied for so long that they create that psychological gap, and so they're bigger than life, you know, things that might be minor to people that are achieved become bigger than life, and so...
Well, what I think, if you think about culture, and I'm really big on culture, culture really cultivates mindset, perception, beliefs, and values. You think about coming about the whole institution of slavery, all right? There was a complete culturation of black life had no value. If you look at from what I call from a timeline, from 1619, when the first African arrived, to 1865, until the end of slavery.
What was the date, the first African?
1619.
Is that for fact? Is
that
fact? Absolute
right? In Virginia,
yeah,
you can look it up. In Virginia.
Is that Jamestown?
Yeah, you got it.
1619.
To 1865, all right? That's 244 years what I call government-sanctioned slavery, okay? Now, I'm not going to get into the horrible details that went on, but imagine now, your whole being, your whole language, your culture, everything, right, is totally uprooted from you. You're not passing nothing on to the next generation. You're seeing black life is totally discarded. Black life has no meaning. But the black entity has no respect, no appreciation. So again now, all right, the second phase, I call from 1865 to 1965, again, government sanctioned, right apartheid, Jim Crowism.
Are you telling me that there's sort of a breaking of the will of people because couldn't it just be that people are so repressed and abused and they eventually become so angry, you know, as happens historically?
No, what I'm saying, in this here structure, right?
As far as the value of life.
Right, in this structure here, right, black life was so devalued or not valued by, right, the owners and also the white populace, right, that blacks themselves started to devalue themselves.
They introjected, they introjected that devaluation instead of becoming more rebellious and resistant.
Right. They too started to internalize the self-hatred, right, that disrespect for black life, because after seeing countless episodes that your life means nothing, right, that you're not valued, other than a commerce commodity. Well then, right, that violence on black life has passed down since our initial arriving here. And you can see that being played out in every stage of history. If you just take a snapshot, you see that black life never had a high value placed upon it. And you see that out in the streets today, whereby in our community, many of our young folks, right, really don't have a high value placed upon black life, and you see how carelessly that they would take it.
Are you saying they don't value other black life and value their own, or just don't value their own as well?
They don't value their own because, for example, if I walk up to you, right, and put a 45 to your head, blow you away, broad daylight, which happens most of the time, I know that I'm going to get life, so I don't even appreciate my own life, because people who appreciate their own life are not doing those things, all right, at the rate that you see out here now. So what I'm saying, what you see in this community has an origin. All behavior has an origin. It just didn't just start. And also, what I'm saying, right? Everything has a beginning. Nothing just pops on the set, overnight. And I'm saying this culture has been cultivated a mindset and behavior, all right, and a certain worldview that is very unhealthy. And of all the groups, Black Americans has never had a chance, right, to receive any kind of debriefing, any kind of grief therapy, anything. All they said was, you're not free to go. And so to our credit, we've been out here maintaining, doing the best we can, but you have what I call an unhealthy legacy that you're also carrying with you. And so, just like the troops from Iraq, they're going to receive psychological debriefing when they come back. Well, African Americans have never undergone any of that. And so, again, it's not, I think, realistic to think that you can go 385 years of that type of horrific treatment and not have no type of psychological baggage, that you would be carrying and you'd be passing on to the next generation. And so it's in that vein that I myself and colleagues try to get us to step back and examine the legacy. Again, we're not excusing Black folks for inappropriate behavior, not taking care of themselves or their kids or violence or anything. What we say that there's some unfinished business left from this legacy, and we need to look at it in order to begin the whole process of psychological healing.
Are you saying that people who are Black in this country in the beginning became so demoralized that their constitution is in a shambles, if you will?
I'm not saying it happened. Because if I took you, Doc, right, or any human being, put them through that horrific orientation, and where all institutions affirmed that you had no value, your life meant nothing, your existence meant nothing, okay, then you would take on that persona internally. There's been studies. One of the great ones is the psychology of oppression, as you know, by the late Francis Fanon, spoke vividly about that, how you take on the persona of your oppression. And I'm saying when you look at the legacy that is out in Black America, all right, you can trace some of these origins back to this legacy. And that's not to exempt or excuse anyone in our community for inappropriate behavior. But there is a legacy. And we have to address the harm psychologically, that was done that has to be a redress.
Mm-hmm. Now, to look at an extreme other example, let's look at the Jewish people. I know some Black people think that people who we think are Jews are not the true Jews. There's that debate going on too, and I was surprised to learn that there are Black persons from the United States living in Israel. That was I don't know much about it, but that was because of Whitney Houston going there, of course. But reportedly their history is one of severe oppression and repression way back, not just recent history, but that how many thousand years do they say they go back? More than 3,000. And somehow instead of becoming demoralized, they almost strengthen from it, like by an opposite, like a reaction formation, if you will. A complex that made them feel more special, if you will, in a way, or needing to be.
I'm glad you brought that up. First of all, right, I don't think you can compare the Jewish experience to the Black experience. First and foremost, right?
Not in any history we know, but what about from way back?
No, we're talking this time and space.
But I mean, considering they've carried it all those years. Yeah.
There's it's like apples to oranges. Number one, our Jewish friends, right, are white. I mean, they could go to any country, although they might have some kind of opposition, but they could assimilate, start businesses, etc. Two, their language was there, still speaking Hebrew. Three, their culture was there. Culture, as you know, is that what binds you, sustains you, and also gets you through.
All right, let's...
Wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
I heard you up. And also, right, one of the biggest things that Jews, I heard about the Irish, not to diminish, their suffering, all of those groups could leave. The Irish, if you came to America, everything got too tough, could leave. The Italian could leave. All these folks could leave to see a horrible situation. African Americans, right, when they came here for 247 years, right, they couldn't go nowhere. They couldn't go anywhere. And guess what? Language, gone. Culture, gone. Tradition, gone. All the things that binds a people and give a people the fabric and the strength to persevere, right? Extreme, say, challenges, gone. What was you given instead? The nigger personality. Let's transform this African person into this here less than nothing inferior being called a nigger. Well, again now, that's like trying to compare apples and oranges. When I look at the Jews, not to diminish their experience,
right,
or to diminish the Irish, you know. But I'm saying my whole point here is looking at what happened to our people, my people. And again, to me, black folks will start to rise when you first got to acknowledge that there's a legacy that's still in our community, and that a lot of legacy is unhealthy that we are passing on to each generation. And we're going to have to start to heal ourselves psychologically, all right, to prevent just a legacy from being passed. And another thing, too, the Jews did leave out of Jerusalem. So they, you know,
Exodus.
Was let go by Moses, right? They was able to get amongst themselves, right? Right? Refortify themselves, all right? Regroup, and move on. Of all the groups here, of all the groups on the Western Hemisphere, everybody has some form of independence except for African Americans and the Indians.
The Indians, yes.
We have always been under, right? You know, white Americans. Everybody's had some experience of being independent, running their own show, learning how to work with each other, build with each other, etc. African Americans never had that psychological experience. What's it like to try to work now and build with each other?
Okay, now, are you saying that there was a plan to transform black people into the so-called nigger idea, or was it a utilitarian thing that great use by this being built up came to white people, like the usury of
right.
it?
I mean,
it became very advantageous.
Right. I mean,
and so it kind of...
This here was a conscious, thought out systemic structure. I'm sure some of your guests have probably heard of Willie Lynch, the Jamaican planter who came to Virginia in 1712. They can go to my website and download the whole article. He spelled out specifically events on the making of a slave, how you transform this African human being, into a slave. And he gave methodical steps that the white planters would take, and also the white populace would take.
For economic advantage.
Oh, of course, we know that. But I'm saying the psychological transformation that had to take place in order for this African to be transformed into this less than, was a conscious, deliberate act. Now we know it had an economic base.
Do you think? Well, the circumstances certainly have a lot to do with it. The very pragmatic, real circumstances have a lot to do with it. What about of how people got to be here to begin with? That has, in and of itself, regardless of who it would be, that would have a lot to do with it. What about the culture before coming here, and what about the identity of culture that you talked about when coming here and after coming here?
There's a book that I read, and your audience might want to consider it, by Chancellor Williams, Total Destruction of the Black Civilization. And in that book, he spells out what black culture was before the invasion of this shit phenomenon took off. Again, you had a rite of passage. You also had a council of elders. You had a tribe. And people was known by their tribe. It wasn't known by color, or being called a Negro. I mean, your tribe, was your calling card. Also, your language. Okay, these are all the things, that we had before we underwent this terrible transformation. Now, again, when you come into the situation, imagine now all of that is now being stripped away from you. Your tribe, your language, okay, your rites of passage, okay, all those things that sustain the people, you no longer have. It's being stripped from your country.
Were they stripped away by virtue of what the people went through? In other words, just in the practical sense.
Exactly. In other words,
just like what the real experience was, not the psychological experience, but the concrete experience, the living experience.
Exactly. In other words, you could no longer utilize your language. You could no longer hold, the council meeting to make decisions about your life. You had no say-so over your well-being, what you did, where you went, things that you would accept, would not accept. So in other words, right, imagine the first person being there, all right? You have some reference of what you were. So then the next generation comes, right? He or she is getting further and further and further away from that reference point, and to a point in time where all they know of what they are is what they've been given. So then there you're left with what I call this creation called, this sub-being called the nigger.
So for some reason, unlike other ethnicities, white ethnicities that maintain a culture, the blacks couldn't maintain a culture?
At all. Not at all.
By virtue of the kind of situation that they were in?
Everything was prohibited. Everything in that 47 years of government-sanctioned slavery was prohibited. You could bring nothing except for what was given. So imagine what you are. You speak English. You got some. I've got.
You couldn't congregate. You couldn't go to church.
All this stuff.
Couldn't hold a festival.
All this stuff.
Couldn't.
Case in point. My first year at Simmons College, doing my graduate work, I'm a member of the Black Social Workers. We was at a conference in Texas, and the last night they have a just real festive ending. And they kept saying the word Harambe, Harambe, Harambe. It is the African word. I sat there for the first time, Doc, knowing what it's like to be a rape victim, because I did not have a clue what that word meant. I knew it came from me, but because of my orientation that I've undergone, I had no reference of what that word meant. And I understood for the first time the importance of culture, what it does, language, all these things combine and bind the people.
Do you think people have to re-inherit their culture or relive their culture?
Well, I think for African Americans, the first thing is first to recognize the legacy that we have in our mix from this here orientation. And it's not to view it with shame or embracing, as some folks say, the victim. You must admit that you have been victimized. Just because you've been victimized does not mean that you're embracing the word of being a victim. And from that acknowledgement, you then start to say, okay, putting healthy realities, healthy worldviews to replace a lot of what I call the unhealthy behavior that you have inherited. Because
there certainly is such a thing as Black, African, American identity and culture.
True.
Definitely.
True.
So somehow, throughout, it may not be, it's not African.
Right.
As we know, as whatever I know of African anyway. But there definitely is something very culturally alive, shall we say.
True.
Yeah.
Again, you come, right, and I bet, right, you have to create, right, a new identity, a new worldview. So you have to improvise given where you are.
But it also comes out of what is uniquely Black African.
Right.
An amalgam, because there's no one thing that's uniquely, but it's certainly from that vast continent called Africa, and from, I was asking you, where is it mostly from? Where did most of the slaves?
East Africa.
East Africa, in the middle section, or
I guess along the coast,
up and down the coast.
The
eastern section.
Yeah, eastern part of Africa, where most of them came.
For many miles along the coast.
Yeah.
And I'd like to mention here what people sometimes talk about, because of course there is animosity between the races, and even as we sit today, and people sometimes bring up how Black Africans themselves were involved in slaves being brought to this country.
True. A very good point. And I want to point out to your listeners, and also the Black people. Let's take Hitler and the rise of Nazism. I'm sure there were some Jews, right, who wanted, trying to save their own skin, decided, right, to get in bed with like the Nazis.
There have been reports of that.
But guess what? We still put the ultimate responsibility for that Holocaust on what the German people, namely Hitler. Now let me tie it with Black folks. There, we know we're Black Africans, right, who sold their brothers into bondage. We know this. It's true. Fact. Okay? But who created the market? Who is responsible for creating this here phenomenon? Europeans. So again, just like in the Jewish example, right? Yes, there were some Jews who did collide with Hitler. Terrible thing. But they created, right, the mechanism, right, for that thought or being to be created. Likewise with the African. If the European has not created the market for it, okay, you still got to put the responsibility on who created the market, and that's the European.
Well,
now,
yes,
granted,
I mean that doesn't obviate the guilt. That's for sure, or where it came from. But I think it was more systematic, wasn't it?
No. What I'm saying is, right,
as far as like within Africa and people who are African themselves being involved, wasn't it a more systematic thing than a person here or a person there?
No. Example: you have Africans. They fight warring with each other. All right, they capture each other. All right. Here you have a European trader bringing used muskets or trinkets, right, to barter for this human cargo. So again, what I'm saying is, right, I'm not here exempting or excusing what Africans did to Africans. But I'm saying we keep.
But it was quite systematic, wasn't it, within the circles within the system that it was involved?
Not totally. Again, you did have episodes of it going on. Okay. But I'm saying if we keep it in what I call the right context. This system was created, right, by the European community.
And don't you think that people take advantage of situations they can take advantage of?
Oh, yes, of course.
It's awful. Isn't that's human nature?
Of course.
If you can take advantage, you will.
But in our reason of thinking, we always look for who created this here situation. Who is responsible for this here a nightmare? And again, we know as far as the black African slave trade was concerned, it was European. So again, did our folks play some part in it? We're not disputing that.
You say our folks. Is there a black identity?
What I'm saying, our ancestors, our African ancestors did play some role in having African shipped into bondage. Yes, we did. But at the same time, we also know, right, that this here system were created, right, for the benefit of the European community.
What about reports of slavery now in Africa?
Yes.
So I mean, in other words, kind of that maybe this kind of thing went on and continues to go on.
Exactly. And my quest, right, is to look at what happened on these American shores. Because again, that's the community that I'm working with every day.
I understand.
And so that's where I focus my attention at. But again, slavery anywhere, right, is atrocious to anybody.
And let's look at the role of women while we're at it.
Oh. It was just imagine, female, had no rights. I mean, it was just, as a book by Bell Hook called Ain't I a Woman, where she does an excellent job of detailing the life of what it was like to be black female in that time. She mentioned that by age 12 or 13, black women started to lose their virginity. Again, if you come to this point in time, right, by 13, 14, in the community, you seem like there is this epidemic with females losing their virginity. What I'm saying to folks, right, there's a legacy that does not value the virginity of black females or black men in general for that.
When did females traditionally have sex in African culture?
Before, you had to have what I call a ritual whereby you had to go to a courtship, okay, you would have elders, all right, separating the female and the male while you courted, okay, and that is a whole ritual. Okay, you didn't have what I call premature sex or folks.
It wasn't like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought there was some situations, like weren't there situations where one male would have sex with several females in certain kind of arrangements?
Well, again, if you go back to for those who were practicing Muslim, okay, but again, he or she had to take those women as his women.
And at what age were they young?
They're always young. Historically, women have always gotten married young, but again, right, they belong, right, or was married to somebody. Here, right, you could sexually exploit them, right, and you were not obligated to them anyway. So that phenomenon really took off during this whole slave phenomenon.
Do you think there could be anger in the female that gets somehow instilled into the male to be antagonistic to the female, shall we say?
Well, I think...
that could be in any culture.
Right.
We don't have...
I think, from the first time the first African was subdued and shackled and started the journey towards the shore to be shipped off, black folks have been mad. There's anger there, both black females and male. And that's why I say for us, we have to really look at this legacy. What has this done to us, to our autonomy, to each other, the relationship that we have with each other, And we got to start, I think, to heal ourselves by looking at this legacy that is still with us.
This program is brought to you by the Psychological Services of Dr. Nancy Mroczek.
What about this legacy of somebody who says he's a player? And I'm going to be accused of making stereotypes here. But I saw a show on Judge Mathis not too long ago. A guy says, I'm a player, you know, and he was explaining what players do. And what about that?
Again,
say about that?
Again, I can still connect that to the legacy. Black men, right, knew that he had no legitimate right out there in the business world. He was not being cultivated to be a business leader. He was not being cultivated to lead the city, right? He was not being cultivated to create anything of substance, right? So to validate yourself, right, you try to latch onto something. So again, right, you want to be the best lover, okay? You're going to work on sexual exploits, okay? Things of that nature. But things that men are judged by. So you never hear white men call him a player. Because why? He's about running the world, ruling the world. So when you're about running and ruling the world, you don't have time to play. But a male has to define himself and work on some category. So a lot of the young brothers I work with, right, you know, when I take them back to the whole Willie Lynch doctrine, I call it a doctrine. I said, look at this here, all right? Where in there were black men able to be entrepreneurs? But it was part of, right, their culture detoxification, right? Bringing all those lies,
actually,
right? Exposing those lies. So I'm saying, when I look at you now, I just see a white person, you know, colleague. I mean, there's nothing like they were before I took this journey. So again, when you start the culture detox, it's a personal journey that you take. And so I'm saying, what we've been saying, me and my colleagues, that black Americans have got to face this legacy that has some horrible side effects that are still with us.
All right, we're getting the sign to stop, and we should, and there's no words for it.
No,
we can't. I hope you've found the program worthwhile this evening. Thank you very much, Larry. And by the way, I meant to mention that Larry is founder of the Osiris Group, and the email address for it is on the air as we leave the show for you if you wanted to contact the group. It's a mental health service in the greater Boston area. And there are no words. I'm not going to try to articulate a closing statement. Hopefully we're just making your brain cells twinge a little and get some spirit going through your body. So good evening, and thank you. See you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.